يعني هما. Hi everyone, it's Wednesday night again. So I'm very excited for tonight's interview. I want to welcome Rafi Berberian, who is a photographer, and I'm very, very excited for him to introduce himself, and I can't wait to hear from you, Rafi. Hi.
Hello, thank you. I'm excited to be presenting to you and Buy Armenian page and anyone else who's tuning in that hopefully should join the Buy Armenian page after watching this. I'm Rafi. Right now I'm in Philadelphia. That's where I was born and raised. I lived in Armenia for 2 years. I did the Birthright Armenia program, and I also worked on my own for a year after that. So the main reason for this work that I've done, this project that I call Armenia in Between, is it kind of stems from going to Armenia for the first time back in 2013 on a typical going to Armenia for the first time family vacation, 1.5, 2 weeks vacation to Armenia. And you get on the van and you go to all the places that a usual tourist would go to, an Armenian tourist. And after when I went on this trip, I thought I saw everything. I thought, I saw all the major things. I saw everything. Why should I go back again? I mean, it would be nice to go back again, but I saw everything. So, and then I did the Birthright Armenia program. And we have trips every weekend. And again, I said, well, most of these places I've seen before. I've seen everything. And it wasn't until a little bit after that that I realized that I haven't seen everything. And there's a lot of more things to see. And that's when I started this Armenia in Between project that I'm continually working on still, hopefully to add to it when I go back to Armenia next time. That's kind of what I'm going to be showing everyone today in my slideshow, my presentation.
Rafi, can you just say some of the places where everyone goes to, like Khorvirab and?
Sure. Actually, I can. That's at the beginning of my presentation. I'll go through it in 2 or 3 slides, just a visual so everyone can see. I could start that now.
Sure.
All right. So here we go. Time to share the screen, the good old sharing of the screen. See if we can do this right. All right, there's that and that. So here it is, Armenia Between, the title slide. So as I was saying, I went to all these tourist places. As you can see here, let's see, laser pointer. So we got all the major sites. You got Hortvirap, we got Noravank, Garni, Gerhard, Savannah. Sometimes people include up here near Gyumri, Marmashen. We got Karahunj down here, Tatev, the Dilijan, Goshavank up here. Yeah, so those are this map shows the major places. And you got Mount Ararat here. This is one of my favorite pictures.
Wow.
Yeah, Gerhard, Noravank, Garni, Hortvirap, Sevanavank. So yeah, so these are the places that everyone would think, and most people are not really sure, that there's other places. They went once, and they might not go again, or they might not rush to go back because what are they going to see? I don't know. Well, this project, get ready for the next slide. Here is all of the places that I have found, either by going on the maps or doing research. Now, disclaimer, I haven't been to all these places. I've just been to a fraction of these places. But what you can see here are all these orange dots are churches, monasteries. You got green dots for natural things like waterfalls, and blue dots for fortresses or, other sites that aren't necessarily, a church. I like all the churches and the religious sites are orange. Everything else is, and I've also included over here the Artsakh side of it too. So a lot of these places are intact. Some of them are in ruins. Some of them are, you could kind of see there used to be something there, but most of them are. I wasn't going around and I saw a rock that looked like a church and I put it on the map. That's not what this is. So I have a little visual of a map of a timeline here. It's kind of rough. It just shows the timeline of Armenia and when this area, Eastern and Western Armenia, was under the control of who. So starting in Armenia, then Persian control, Muslim, Armenia back again, Byzantine for a short time. You have a little area here with Cilicia, then the Seljuks, Mongols, Turks, Mongols, and so forth. So you're going to see this a couple times where I just put a little cross what the timeline is of what the site is. So my presentation is going to go through one site or two sites maybe from each region or province in Armenia. So we're going to start with the Tavush region. So our first stop is Tavush, and that kind of was a rocky part of Armenia in the early between Armenia and Georgia. They were sometimes fighting over this area. And on our way to our next site, you can see some of my friends here, and what you're looking at is a road, and it actually has illegal logging operations on it. So it's kind of tough to get to this place, which you'll see in a few seconds. We had to use a four-wheeler, and eventually we got there, but we had to walk some of it. So our first stop is Kiran's Monastery. As you can see, it was 13th to 14th century. It's made out of bricks, which is not that usual for churches in Armenia. The word Kirans actually comes from a legend. It's called Kir is a word for mortar, and Ans means, it's coming from it or coming from that thing, which is mortar. So according to legend, there was a rich guy and he had a very beautiful daughter. And I think this might be similar to other stories you might hear in Armenia. And the craftsman, the guy who was building the church, he fell in love with the daughter and he said, I'm going to build this church. And he tried to show the father that, yes, I could do something really well. And after he made the church and he was on the top and it was almost finished, and the rich man comes and he asked, hey, how does the church look? And he said, it looks great, but Kiran Ansa, which means it was like uneven or something. And he jumped off the church and killed himself. Not a fun story, but that's one of the legends of how Kiran's got its name. Up there we are. We're up top here. This is around a 3-hour drive from Yerevan. And you can see there's other places around there that you can also visit that I'm not going to talk about, but lots of other stuff. So there's the church, there's some refectories, there's other buildings around this area, and you can see the drum of the church has this beautiful stone inlay, beautiful colors, a lot of intricate work there. And then on the inside, here's the inside of the church. It's actually, unfortunately, it's covered with a lot of graffiti, but also there are frescoes. The frescoes, these frescoes on the corners are showing the four evangelists, and there's also some decorative work. There's a Ascension Old Testament scene that's up top here. Also, it's hard to see, but you could tell the glory of what it used to look like. This is also, there's also some other buildings in the area. This is a refectory. It's actually interesting to see buildings like this because it's vernacular architecture. So it's not really serving a purpose other than a religious purpose. So they might have eaten in here or done other activities in this area. And not a lot of these types of buildings are intact in Armenia. Mostly you'll just see the churches intact because other buildings weren't built with as great materials as the churches were. And that's why churches are most of the things only standing. So there's just a lot of little things to explore around this area. So, and it is in the middle of nowhere. So there's lots of things growing on it. It's not really well kept. There's a picture of, let's see, there's a cross there. Here, this is the scene from, if you look out from the church, there is nothing. It's in the middle of nowhere. So it's a tough place to get to, I'd say. Some of these places are not hard to get to, and some of them are. So I'll mention what those places are. So our next stop is the Lori region. We're going to be looking at the Odzun Church. Odzun is an easy place to get to. It's right in a town on the road. It's close to you. If you're going up to Sanahin and Hafpat monasteries, the UNESCO sites, this is on the way, easy to stop. It's in between those places. This was built in two layers, kind of. It was built on a pre-Christian site, and then the church was built on top of that. And the present day appearance of this church comes from the 8th century. So there we are over here now. It's a little bit west of where the Kirans monastery is. So you kind of see these little clumps of places here that where people were living, and lots of sites are in those areas. This is another around a 3-hour drive from Yerevan. When I was there, they were doing some renovation work, so it didn't look that great. There was some scaffolding. I only got to go once, so it is what it is. It's considered, they say it's one of the nicest, finest cupola basilica. So the basilica plan is this square plan here, like this, with there's chambers on the sides, and then there's a cupola or a dome on the top. And it's just interesting. It's a unique looking church, and there's khachkars in the yard. Here's some of the scaffolding and a crane. So they were making some noise, but I think they're restoring it pretty nicely. From what I've seen pictures beforehand, it was kind of getting overgrown and discolored. And you can see some beautiful ornamentation around the outside, the entrance of the church. There's about 25 sculptures preserved from the 4th century from the original site. And you can see some of the remnants of the decorations from before that they've saved right here. And this is one, this sculpture of the Mary and Mother and a Child is one of the oldest in the world, of a sculpture of Mother and Child from the 4th century. So it's pretty interesting that this little thing, just, it's here, and most people don't know it's there. There's some other decorations on the outside. This is of Jesus holding the open book, holding the first words of the gospel, the St. John. And then there's 2 angels on either side that are actually, they're holding snakes, that the snakes are coming up and they're holding them back, I guess, which is a kind of a unique composition in Armenian and Christian art. Another view of the inside of the church. It's a big church from the inside. It's a big, like, cavernous space. And another thing in the field around the church is the Odzun funerary monument. This is from the 6th century. It's a monument, and it was, it was for someone very important. I don't think we know who it was exactly for, but but it is very unique. There's only one other type of funeral monument in Armenia that looks similar to this. And on the edges are the scenes of the propagation of Christianity through Armenia. So it's showing how the apostles and how went around and spread it, and how King Turtad, accepted Christianity, and the whole story. So it's very interesting to get a up close look at it. And you could, if you know the stories and you do some research beforehand, it's really interesting to look at. So our next stop is the Shirak region. We're going to be stopping at the Yaruk Basilica. That might be a place that some people have seen before. I'm not sure. I've seen that on some tour sides of the bus, those pictures that you have on the tour guides. This is a very, very old site. This is around an hour and 45-minute drive from Yerevan, right on the border of Turkey. It's near the village of Ani Pemza. And it's right, if you look in this picture, this area in the back is actually Turkey. And the Ahurian River runs in this gorge down here. And you can actually, right here, you can see the basilica. So the name itself is originated maybe from the tradition of Matav, or the Armenian or religious animal sacrifice. But also they say it could mean quivering, Yaruk in Old Armenian. Not sure why. There's still some research that I'm not an expert on. I'm just a photographer, but I do some research and historian, amateur historian stuff. So it is considered one of the ancient examples of Armenian architecture from the 4th to the 6th century. It might have been started in the 4th century and then postponed and then finished in the 6th century. And it is one of the earliest surviving Armenian monuments, or Christian monuments in Armenia. So here's the inside, no roof, it's just open. And in the field around it, there's pieces of it that they are, I guess one day they're going to go through it. They're all numbered, so they're probably going to go through and maybe do some restoration at some point, or they're just recording it for, just to keep a record of it. On the back of the basilica, there's a inscription, and it says who the church is for. It's for Saint John the Baptist and Saint Stephen. So there's what the church looks like, the architecture. So over here on the edges of the church, on this area on the top and the bottom, or north and the south, we have this area here where there's side entrances as well. And you could see, here's some of my friends here again, you could see the architecture of the church, and there's these double vaulted ceilings on the inside, which is, it's pretty intricate for the time that this was built in the 4th century. And around the outside, which is very interesting, and you can tell the age of it, is called the crepidoma, which is the steps that are surrounding the outside, kind of like you would see on a Greek building, the steps going all the way around. And this is similar, if you've ever been there, to Zvartnots, the same steps going around in Zvartnots Cathedral, and it's from the similar time period. And you could tell from these entrances the classical Greek or Roman architectural aspects here. So a lot of the early Armenian stuff, architecture like this, had these types of the columns with the cornices that have these leaves on them, these palm trees here, very kind of classical kind of architecture. And there's a lot of other things that I'll skip, but there's also a lot of these early Christian crosses here. Some people call it the Maltese cross, but that's from the 14th century. And coincidentally, the Maltese cross was for the Order of St. John, which is what this church was dedicated to, St. John the Baptist. Purely coincidental, but you can see this cross in a bunch of places on the church. Excavations in this area found a lot of stillborn graves of babies that were not born or died during childbirth. And the thought was that people would bury unborn children at this church because they were not yet baptized. So St. John would baptize the children that were stillborn. Around the church, there's some caves, which are interesting. There's carved out areas. It might have been a place where people sat and prayed. We're not sure. So next stop, the Aragatsotin region. And we're going to visit Tefer Monastery. Tefer is a very unique looking monastery. It's built in the 13th century. And that is only a 45-minute drive from Yerevan on the slopes of Mount Aragat. So very close. So very close to Yerevan. So this church is kind of at the top of a, top of a hill, top of a mountain on the slopes where you get a really good view of everything. You can see how it has three, it almost looks like three churches, but it's just the entrance to the Gavet, or the narthex of the church, has these two extra cupolas on it. And actually, it's interesting. The Gavet, or the entrance of the church, is bigger than the church itself. So some interesting views here. So here's the front of it, the front of the Gavet. You can see these two towers here. You don't really see that at other churches. I've never seen it anywhere else except for this Tefer monastery. And above the entrance here, these crosses are a memorial, apparently memorials to the wealthy donors who helped construct the church. And apparently they're given free passage to heaven because of these, because they donated this cross. And here's the inside of the Gavet. Again, it's very, it's like a cavern on the inside. It's very large. There's the inside of one of the little cupolas. This church was restored in the 15th century and at the end of the 18th century because of mostly damage to from earthquakes. And the last renovation was in 1975 and 76. So the architect that designed Tefer Monastery is the same that designed Sarmosavank and Hovhanavank, which also might be, they're kind of a second level tourist destination. Maybe some people have seen it, some people haven't. Right in front of it is this shrine. It's called Tukhmanuk. It's a kind of like a chapel or a shrine that was dedicated to it was in a it's called a funeral. It's more of a funerary chapel. So you can see this beautiful view of Mount Ararat and the valley below it, and some nice views of the church and some khachkars in the area. This funerary monument is from the 5th century. So our next stop is Kotaik. And we are stopping at the Surp Asfatatin Church in Yefar, which was completed in 1301 during the Zakarid dynasty. It was built as an alternate church to another church that was ruined nearby. I went there, it was very ruined, so not really much to see there. And that was from the 5th or 6th centuries. So this one is a 25-minute drive from Yerevan. And when I say from Yerevan, I mean the center of Yerevan, like Genshron area. This is a tiny church. It's a small cruciform shape, one single drum with an umbrella dome. And you can see there's 12 columns here for the 12 apostles. And it's very intricately carved. A lot of extra beautiful carvings all around it. This is something, it's a gem. It's something that you can't imagine that people who come to Armenia won't visit this church just to see how beautiful the carvings are all around the outside. There aren't a lot of churches like this in Armenia. Although I think I might be saying that a lot. But all these places are so unique. As you can see here, there's actually an upper chapel above the main chapel. And for those people that know Noravank, this would have had the similar steps. These steps going down the same as the Noravank steps, but unfortunately those steps aren't there, and there are a bunch of other churches in Armenia that have this type of steps, but most of them, they're all pretty much gone because this was not, it's not a very sturdy structure, or it's easy to break off, I guess I would say. And here is a farther view of it. So you can kind of see where the steps would have been coming down off the edges here. The cross, and we're going to see some closer up images of some of the carvings. So here is the Virgin Mary holding Jesus, and another saint here. And we have motifs of a bull and a lion. And you might see these images in other places. They represent the royal families. So whatever family sponsored the building of a church, they would put their animal, whatever the representation was on this type of church. And then we also have some sort of eagle or some sort of big bird, large bird with some animal, looks like a sheep in its grasp. There it is. So unfortunately the head came off, but you could just look at these carvings all around, all up and down. It's just so intricate. And then on this side, there's a mountain goat. So there's on every side, there's something different. And then here, I don't have a close-up of this one, but there's some sort of cat, or a large cat, or a lion, or a leopard, or something, and it's eating some prey, a goat or some other animal. Oh, there it is, a closer up. It actually kind of looks like a leopard. Like the Armenia has Caucasian leopards, which are very rare, and you can see them in Khosrov Preserve. Well, you can't really see them, but they catch them on camera sometimes. And another interesting aspect of the church is above here. You might be able to see there's some tiles that have Arabic, or could be early Ottoman script on the tiles. There it is. So that's another. I'm not exactly sure about that. I'm still searching for the answer for that. But it is interesting to see that these tiles are incorporated into the church. So, and I think we're going to say goodbye to Yaghvar, and we're going to the Ararat region. In the Ararat region, we're going to visit the Habutstar Monastery. So here's the Habutstar Monastery. You have a couple of different things. You have the Amena Perkich Church, All Saviors, and you have another area here with two different little churches in it, in this enclosed walled area. So this is a 40-minute drive from Yerevan. This is close to Garni in the Gerhard area. It's actually overlooking. So when you go to Garni, you're at a gorge, and across the gorge is where this Habutstar monastery is. And if you know where to look from Garni, you can see this monastery, but you have to know exactly where to look, and it's very small to see. So this church was originally built in the 10th century. It's also the Palavuni family, who also were the founders of the Kecharis Monastery in Sakhadzor. So you can see from here, there's a section of one of the churches is up on a hill overlooking the other section. And there's also some khachkars and other decorative pieces around. The entrance to the monastery is through this arched doorway here. These are some of my friends. I drag my friends a lot of places to go with me because I don't like to go by myself, but sometimes they get in my pictures. So you can see here one of the churches, and right next to it is another church. And what you can see here, if you look closely, there's some feathers there. It's on a pedestal. You might have guessed it. It's a sacrifice.
Yeah.
So when we got to the church, there were some locals, and they were doing a chicken sacrifice, and we kind of joined in, and then we ate with them. There's some pictures of that later. Here they are over here, and there's the remnants again. You can see one of the churches and a second church right next to each other. And here's the inside of one of the bigger churches. Some khachkars. You'll find khachkars everywhere. All of them are different. It's worth to take a long look at every single one you see. And this is the Amana Perkich church on the top here. Unfortunately, it's in ruins, but enough of it is intact to make it worth to go seeing. And the church is very interesting because of the kind of a checkerboard pattern with the black and the red tombstone. And there's 2 little prayer rooms on either side as well. There's some of my friends lighting some candles. And here's the front of the church. So you could really see how it pops. You know, the colors just pop from the red and the black tombstone. And it's on the inside too. And then you can see some inscriptions all around. And all around the outside of the church there are graves. So, you know, we walk on the graves because in the Armenian tradition, it's okay to walk on top of the graves. And that's why they put them where people would walk, because they're saying, you know, we came before you and we're building you up, basically. You're on, you know, you're here because of us. So you stand on top of us and you keep building up. And here's us with the locals, and they invited us to eat some chicken and some oranges, and it was 11 in the morning. So of course we had some toti ochi, which was a way to start the morning. And you can't say no to that. Yeah, it was an unexpected, but you know, you can't say no. And it was really everywhere you go in Armenia, if you meet the local people there, they're so hospitable. They want you to sit, they want you to eat, they want you to drink with them, and they'll ask you a lot of questions, and you'll have a good time. And there's them doing the another chicken sacrifice. And so over here in the distance is Garni. And the next picture you'll see, this is what you can see. Here's Garni. All those people that have been to Garni, look in this direction next time you go, and you'll see the Habodstar Monastery. And also around the edges, there's some other shrines in the area, other little monuments, because this was a inhabited area at some point. And here's us heading back home. And someone had their car. At the end of our hike, we're walking back down into the gorge. So we entered through an entrance of the Khosrov Reserve, and a way to get back would be to walk down the gorge that's next to the Garni village. So you can see again, here's the Garni temple, and we're walking down, and you can see this rock formation called Symphony of Stones with the 11th century medieval bridge. Again, this is only a 5-minute drive from Garni temple. This is the columnar jointing volcanic formation, similar to what you might see at the Giant's Causeway in Ireland or Devil's Tower in Wyoming in the United States. So it's just a very interesting thing to see. You can stand underneath it. You can see how big it is compared to my friends. Just something you can't miss.
Wow.
Yeah. And as you see here, see the people down here. That's how small they are compared to it. And then again, that 11th century medieval bridge. And here's the road to get back up to Garni, back to the village. And sometimes, unfortunately, you have to push your taxi up the hill because the stones are slippery. This would not happen anywhere else but Armenia. So, and right across from that, I mentioned the Khosrov Reserve. The Khosrov Reserve is one of the oldest reserves in the world. One of the oldest protected areas in the world. It was founded in the 4th century by King Khosrov, obviously, King Khosrov of Armenia. And there were some villages in this area. There was little towns. They did the royal hunting in this area. There's some a little castle here from the 10th century. And there's lots of little things that you can explore in here. The Khosrov Reserve also has lots of different wildlife. We were so lucky. You can't really see it that well, but here is the Caucasian lynx. And we were with a guide, and he went crazy when he saw this. He was so excited because they've only seen this lynx one other time. A lynx is a type of cat. They had only seen this lynx one other time in person ever in the park, except besides seeing it on camera. So they were very excited to see this, and I managed to get kind of an okay picture. There's khachkars all around this area, in this big area of the reserve, because there's used to be little settlements here. I have some stats here: 312 registered monuments, 29 monasteries, churches and chapels, 19 settlements, 3 fortresses, 222 crossstones and gravestones, and 40 other medieval monuments that are mostly in ruins. But it's a place that they have a website you can go arrange, and you get a guide, and you can go to different places in this area. You can also see, here are some wild boar here. So there's a lot of wildlife and a little sunset. And we were staying in a little guest house on the property there. And actually, there's lights in the distance over here. Is Yerevan, which is only around 30 miles away. So very close. And again, there's a lot of bird species, 192 bird species belonging to 44 families. And the bird life in this reserve accounts for 56% of the bird species in Armenia. So lots of, here's a bird here, you know, a good amount of nature, wildlife, and history all in this one place. So you can walk through the trails and you see khachkars all over the place. And there's also some people that live in here. We've met this small community of 8 people that live in Khosrow during the warm months, and they insisted that we go grocery shopping with them. And by grocery shopping, that meant we got a big bag, and they filled it with fruits and vegetables from their garden, and honey. And they have their own lavash area where they make the lavash and the tonir. It was very hospitable, father and a son. Yeah. So again, another place we met the locals, and they're very hospitable. Next up is Armavir region. This is the Sadarabad Memorial Museum. I think most people have probably heard of this or visited here, but it's worth mentioning. The Battle of Sadarabad was May 22nd to 26, 1918. And basically, the Armenian army stopped the Turks from advancing and really kept the Armenian nation alive. And if that hadn't happened, along with the battle at Aparan, Armenia might not even exist. And that is over here. So there's a monuments here. They're designed by the architect Israelian, and we have these 2 winged oxen and these bell towers here, and the bells ring every year on the anniversary of the victory. And we have also these birds here that line the way to the museum, which is behind here. And the curved wall, this is called the Wall of Victory. It has scenes of the battle and a figure of a woman and a child. And it's just this is all from the 1970s, I believe, or 60s. So it's relatively modern. And there's also a museum here. One of the coolest parts of this museum is this roof that's in this big hall of the museum. This is called Hazarashen, or, it means 1,000 pieces, made from 1,000. And this actually, this was used in houses, peasant houses back in the medieval times. And they would lace the stones together to make this kind of dome. And this museum was built in 1978. That's what it was, by architect Raphael Israelian. He also was the architect of St. Vartan Cathedral in New York City, and the military museum under the Meir Hayastan statue in Yerevan. So in a church that was actually really close to Kiran's monastery that I mentioned first, Arakelot's monastery, you could find this exact same type of ceiling. And this was 10 minutes, 15 minutes away from the Kiran's monastery, the same type of ceiling. So it's really interesting to see the inspiration of where that came from. Our next region is the Gerarkunik region, which is where Lake Sevan is. And we're going to be looking at the Orbelian Caravanserai. This is one place that is not a church, and it's a caravanserai, which is basically a place where travelers along the Silk Road would stay, and their animals would stay inside these buildings, and they would have a lodging in some part of the building. It was built in 1332 by Orbelian family, And you can see here, this is where it is. It's actually directly south of Lake Sevan. It goes through the Vartanyans Pass. It's like a mountain pass that comes down into the Vyatstor region. This is a 2.5-hour drive, but it's right on the road. And a lot of times what I suggest people do, not specifically to visit here, but a lot of people go to Lake Sevan and they see stuff and they go back in one day. But a lot of times a really good thing to do would go to Lake Sevan, spend the night somewhere, and come all the way down and make this loop. And you make one big loop and you'll be able to see a bunch of different things. And you would be able to see Noravank along the way and Hordvirap. And it's a really nice, beautiful area. So this is the Vartanyans Pass. It's an elevation of 2,410 meters or 7,900 feet. It goes straight down into the Vyatstor region. And it's also a path that migratory birds use when they migrate to Lake Sevan. Here's just a quick view of the Silk Roads, and Armenia is over here. So you can see this area right here is kind of where one of the main paths of the Silk Road was, and it goes right through Armenia. And this is where that caravanserai would have been, in this area. There's an Armenian inscription that says who built it and when they built it and why they built it. And there's also above the doorway a Persian inscription that is hard to see, but it's there. It's in Persian. That gives the date of 1326. Here's the inside of it. So what you're seeing is the main hallway. The main entrance is here, and this is the hallway here. And there's 3 zones. This middle area, and then there's 2 zones on each side. One over here and one over here. The animals, when they would come in with the people, would rest on the insides of these areas, and the people would stay out here or in a separate chamber in the back. And the reason that the animals would stay there, the reason we know, is because there's these troughs in between. So there's where food or water would be placed, and the animals would eat from them without having to leave their area. It's interesting to see, architecture, how it was used that in not a religious setting. And then there's 2 holes in the top that would let out smoke. And those are the only things that are really decorative in this building. So it is one of the most well-preserved caravanserais in Armenia. There are a couple others that are not as well maintained, or they're more in ruins, but this one is beautiful and it's amazing to see. And it's on the road. It's so accessible. And on the outside, you could see a bull, and I think is a lion, maybe. Again, similar to those animals that we saw carved on the Yekhvar church. And some of the decorations. This is actually kind of a similar, you've seen decorations like this maybe in Persian architecture. And here's the roof. And the roof is solid stone, so you could go on top of it. It's like you could jump up and down, you won't feel a thing. It's amazing how solid this structure is. And so we're also going to check out this little site here. I couldn't not include this next site. It's right on Lake Sevan. It's called Odzabert, meaning Serpent's Fortress. It's a Urartian excavation, and the Urartu was basically the civilization that was before Armenia. So, for example, the Erebuni Fortress in Yerevan, it's a Urartu fortress. It's our ancestors, basically, who was here before. So they're doing this excavation of this site. This site was founded between 735 and 713 BC, before Christ. And it's considered the best preserved Urartian fortification in the Lake Sevan area. You can see kind of the remnants of, I'm not sure yet, but hopefully they're going to continue their excavations. And then from that site, you can see here's Lake Sevan right here. All right, so what is very interesting is before the Soviet time, when they kind of lowered the levels of Lake Sevan, and who knows how high it was back 700 BC, the water used to kind of come up to here, and you can kind of see where the water is worn away at this rocks, and how the up here is where that fortification was. So this might have been the edge of the water when the city was built up here. And very interestingly, you can see this monument here. And on this monument, right here, is a cuneiform inscription. And the inscription says that the city was built in dedication of the god Tesheba, god of thunder, and speaks of the conquest of Rusa I, who is the guy that founded the city. And very important, the etymology or the origin of the name of Lake Sevan was found in this inscription, and is why we call Lake Sevan Lake Sevan. It's written right in this inscription in this cuneiform. So that is something very, very important to our history. Something Lake Sevan is so important to Armenia, and here's the reason why we call it Lake Sevan in this inscription. This required a little bit of research to find the exact location because there's no mark on the map. So hopefully there will be one day. Our next spot is Vayotzor region, and we're going to stop at Spitakavor Monastery. This is kind of hard to get to, and it's on a dirt road. You have to get four-wheel drive to get up here. This is it's from the 14th century, and we're down here, just around 2.5-hour drive from Yerevan. You can see it up on the hill here. Spitak means in white in Armenian, and it kind of looks like a white beacon. It probably looked a lot whiter when it was new, and that's why they called it Spitakavor. This is built by the Procyon dynasty during the Zakarid Armenian period. It was completed in 1321, and there is a 3-story bell tower here in 1330. So you can see the view that you get from it. And some nice ornamentation here. And on the front door, you can see a mid-century sculpture of Mary and Child, which is not present on a lot of churches in Armenia, but when you do see it, it's remarkable to see. Here's the inside of the church. Not too ornate on the inside, but it's kind of small. And here we see, which we see on a lot of churches, but you don't notice it all the time, are the donors of the church holding the church up. So this is presumably the two princes Prince Aiki, who died in 1318, and his son, Prince Amir. And those are the donors for this church. And here's on the other side, there's been some damage. I think they might have done a bad job restoring the church. I don't think there was an earthquake and it ended up like that. So they might need to fix that at some point. And then over here you see a sundial, which you see on some churches. It's kind of cool. You can see the sun hits it, and this pole sticking out tells you what time it is. I don't know how accurate it is, but could be pretty accurate, and accurate enough back in the 14th century. So here's another view of the church. And what you're looking at here, something important, is it's a Garagi Nijde grave. This is the final resting spot, some of the final resting spot for Garagi Nijde. He died in a Soviet prison in 1955, and secretly his remains were buried here in the mid-80s. And then at the end of the 80s, an actual gravestone and marker were placed. For those who don't know, Garagi Nijde was a key political and military leader during the First Republic of Armenia, 1918 to 20, and he's considered a national hero. But in 2005, during a celebration of the 84th anniversary of the Republic of Mountainous Armenia, that's a whole nother thing. Parts of his body were taken from here, and they were placed on the slopes of Mount Khushtup near Nijde's memorial in Kapan, which is right here. So there's another in Kapan, in more south from here, is where another monument to him is, and parts of his remains are here. Right next to Spitakavor Monastery, this is from Spitakavor Monastery, you can see this rocky outcrop, and there's actually a fortress on there. It's called Poloraber or Proshaber, and it's right at the top of this hill. You can see the walls, built in the 13th century. It was built by King Prince Prosh Gakbakyan, who was also known to have played a role in building Gerhard Monastery. So there's some walls intact. There's not much to it, but it's an interesting thing to hike around and just see what's left. There's the walls are basalt. There's some water supply that used to be here. Make sure you don't fall in that hole. It's really deep. And you can see the beautiful scenery around it. And there's some, there's some lore and some things that go along with this, but they're long stories, and I'm not gonna talk about those stories. There's our car down there, so that's how high we had to walk. So it wasn't too bad, but for someone that's faint of heart, probably not the best idea. And our last region is a Sunnik region down in the south. And this is the title slide here. This is the Great Hermitage Monastery of Tatev, or Tatevi Anapat. The reason that I put this as the cover slide, the cover page of Armenia in Between, is because it literally is in between. People go to Tatev Monastery, and when you're in Tatev Monastery, you take the Wings of Tatev tramway, and you'll see this right below you. You pass right over it. You won't know what it is. You don't know. You never hear about it. I think the guy on the microphone says one sentence about it, and then you move on. So again, that's right. We're in the south here. 5-hour drive from Yerevan. So you take the road down and you hike through the gorge. It's not terribly difficult hike. It took only 15 minutes from the main road. And here it is. There's the tram car. There's people. Well, it's dark. It's getting dark. We had to go quickly before it got dark, but you go right over top of it. So this was built in the 17th century. So it's not as old as some of the other medieval ones. But the reason it was built is because another monastery was destroyed by an earthquake that was close by. So they moved themselves to here, and they built this monastery. It was an educational and spiritual center, and it could hold up to 500 monks at the top of its the main, when everything was going. This is the Holy Mother of God church from 1663. It's not too ornate. It's kind of what you would expect at a monastery that's devoted just for monks to pray at. Not too elegant. And a Gavet was also built in 1743 in the 18th century. Here's the inside. It's definitely getting dark. There's no lights in there. So we did it quick. Not very ornate. Unfortunately, there's some graffiti. This is the entranceway to the church. And here it is. Here's the view that you will see when you're on the Tatev tramway from above. On your way to Tatev Monastery, this is what you see. I mean, you don't see it like this because I zoomed in with my camera, but this is what you see, and this is what you're saying, how come I don't know about this? What is this? Why don't I know anything about it? So that's what it looks like. And here's some other views of it. It's in the Vorotan River Gorge, so it has this beautiful surroundings. And it's abandoned. Not fully abandoned. I think there was one guy living there when we went there. The defensive walls, these really tall walls around it, were built in the 18th century. And there's some other buildings around it that served the monks' quarters and other buildings. Some remnants of archways. Here's a fireplace. It was dark at this point, so we had flashlights. Yeah, lots of different buildings. The walls are very tall, taller than you'd expect until you got there and you notice. I mean, you're as tall as one of these holes here, so very big. And here's the towel of a guy that we think was living there. We didn't see anybody. We didn't want to, disturb anybody, so we stayed our distance and didn't make too much noise. And then from here you can see the tram car above, and another nice view of it. So up here you can see where the tram car is going. Above here is where Tatev Monastery is. You go up here and then down again and up, and you'll get there. And finally, I'm going to just show you a quick Ukhtasar petroglyphs. This is something I wanted to add because it's not a church or a monastery. It's right near the Karahunj, where you turn to Karahunj, but it's the other direction. It's around 10 miles, 17 kilometers up a mountain. Beautiful scenery. Here's our car. You need a 4-wheel drive car to get there. And we couldn't go all the way because we got stuck. So we had to turn around, but we walked the rest of the way. Ukhtasar means camel. Ukht means camel and Sar is mountain. That's why they call it. This looks like a camel hump here. It's around 10,500 feet or 3,200 meters. So one of the higher points in Armenia. And there's a lake here, a glacial lake. Here's some of the carvings here. Petroglyph, meaning stone, and glyph, carved. It was actually discovered in the early 20th century, but it's not fully understood yet. And some scientists believe the carvings are from 12 to 15,000 years ago. But some others say only 7 to 4,000 years ago. Either way, very far away. Around 2,000 decorative rocks are shown. They show hunting scenes and scenes of animals and geometric shapes, and some even proto zodiac signs. You can see a guy here with a knife. Hard to see, but this is looks like a high five to me. Two guys giving a high five to each other. Some scientists say that, or researchers say this area was like a nomadic dwelling for cattle herding people. So they would come, they would rest. There was water for the cows, and they would make carvings. But yeah, so it's the carvings are, some of them are really bright. You can see them really well, and some of them are fading away, but they're very noticeable once you get up there. Then, so there's a hunting scene. Some of them are upside down, which means they were killed, and there's a hunter off to the side here. And that was our trip, and that is Armenia in between. Hopefully I didn't go too long on that, but that's the summary version of Armenia in between. So I also do presentations that are specific for each province or region, but this one was 1 or 2 places from each region. That's it. Thank you. Hopefully nobody fell asleep.
No, Rafi, that was really great, and it kind of
Shall I stop?
it kind of puts a mental map of what I want to maybe see the next time I'm in Armenia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I wanted to stress the most important thing is that if you've been to Armenia once or twice, and you've seen Khorvirab, Noravan, Garni, Gerhard, and you're hesitant about going back because you say, I thought I saw everything. Like, what am I going to do? There's a lot of things that you can go see. Now, the most important places, there's a reason why they're most important, because architecturally they're big, they're restored, they're nice looking, they have interesting, very important history, sure, but there's other places that are so close to all these other places you're visiting that you could just stop and see. That you can go see Noravank for a second time, but you can also go see that Spitakavor monastery, or you can see Sambatabert fortress, which I didn't talk about. It's all right there. Some places, sure, it's hard to get to. In some places, it's right on the road and you just don't know it. Yeah.
One thing that was going through my mind throughout your presentation is when you were saying that this was built in 13th century, or this was built in 7th century or 8th century or 4th century. And I started thinking about the time, the length of time that is the United States history is like 350 years old, maybe 500 years old, maybe 600 years old, and we're talking about 1,000 years ago or 1,500 years ago.
That's right.
It just the amount of time that the Armenians have survived and they are still here, it's really amazing.
There's a lot of, the architecture, a lot of the churches, some of them from 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th century, 10th century, it predates some of the great European cathedrals. And even they say that the Ani Cathedral is one of the first examples, not pure examples, but first examples of a Gothic style. We don't call it Gothic, but they say it could have been inspiration for the Gothic style that arose in Europe, because it was along these major pathways that people would go. Silk Road. Ani was a city where travelers went from east to west, and they stopped in Ani. So it's there's more implications than just, oh, look at this Armenian architecture. It's look what Armenia possibly could have given to the rest of the world, but you don't really hear too much about it.
Right.
Yeah, thank you very much. It was really, really wonderful. And maybe sometime in the future we can have you present on, maybe a more one specific area where you can go into more detail.
Details, yes, for sure.
Thank you for taking the time.
There are a few questions you can answer, go back and answer probably, and then they're saying, thank you so much for arranging this. Thank you so much for an amazing presentation. Great presentation, Rafi. Thank you. So
I'm glad to hear. And if you want to see more, I post. So right now, actually, I've been posting on my Instagram, and which gets shared to my Facebook as well. I'm going through my whole project from south to north. So every site I'm putting, like Instagram lets you only put 10 pictures, but so I'm putting 10 pictures and I'm putting the descriptions under each picture of each site. And as I go, I'm sharing them on my Instagram, Facebook, Rafi Berberian Photography Facebook. I'll be sharing them on the Buy Armenia Plus group. But also all the pictures are on my website as well, and they're for sale. If people want to buy pictures, you can either order a print, a physical print, a digital print. I do custom framing. I can do on canvas, anything. It's tough with this type of thing because there's so many pictures that I can't just say, here's 5 pictures, you can buy those. I want people to say, hey, do you have a picture of this? Do you have a picture of that? Can I have it like this, or can I have it like that? It's hard to, everything's customizable. So you can find that on my website.
Very good.
There's just one question I want to ask from the audience, and then we can wrap it up. And that comes from Sofia Manjoyan. Can you hike in the reserve?
So the reserve is tricky. So you kind of need permission to go to the reserve. Not permission. You need to call ahead to the preserve's office, and from there you can arrange to have a guide that hikes with you. They're like park rangers. They don't like people going in by themselves because it's like a preserved area. So they don't want large groups of people going in and just disturbing the wildlife, which is very unique in Khosrow. That the wildlife there you can't find anywhere else. If you go onto their Facebook, you can see videos of Caucasian leopard videos they catch, lynx, boar, things like that. So you would have to go to their website or call them and arrange for you to go there, basically. If you ask the locals that live in there, they gave us their phone number and they said, just call us and we'll pick you up. But yeah, so that area, and it's such a big area, you kind of want someone to go with you so they can guide you to the places that you want to see. Because you could just be walking in the forest in the middle of nowhere and you're not going to see anything. But you get a map, you go with the guide, you can see settlements, ruins of settlements that used to be there. You'll see khachkars around those areas. They'll take you places that they know that a family of wild boars goes by this area. We sat down and we picked walnuts from a tree and ate them while the sun was setting, and it was just like, the guide knew where to go. That area around there is actually called Urtadzor, so like Valley of Thyme, basically. So there's all this wild thyme growing there. It smells beautiful if you're there during the spring, when everything's growing. So that's the Khosrow Preserve. It's a huge area. So if you want to go, should take 3 or 4 trips to go to each specific place, because you have to hike everywhere. You can't drive to each spot, unfortunately. So
very good. Thank you again, and have a good night, and we'll see you around.
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much, and I hope you all enjoyed it, and maybe I'll see you again.
Of course. Thank you.
Have a good